Just a reminder to you guys, today's our lunch and learn, so we're going to have some time afterwards. We can sit down, have lunch, and discuss about so many topics that we have here. So, without any further to add, please, Sandra.
Today the reading is going to be on the book Happy Life from Divaldo Pereira Franco, and it says, "You need serenity every step of the way. Serenity to discern, act, and live. Life gallops ahead and changes scenery every minute, requiring permanent serenity so as not to smash people. The person who gets upset and tries to match the cyclopean speed of these days will snap because he's going from one situation to another very fast, without even time to adapt to the previous phase. New comes and events pass, producing immense emotional, mental, and physical wear and tear. Protect yourself in serenity, preserving the equipment of your existence, which was designed for use, but not for abuse."
With those words in our minds and our hearts, let us now elevate our thoughts to our Master Jesus and to the Creator of this universe, our Father, Mother, God, that through all the years and ages, give to us this creative thought of love and charity and understanding that brings to us the light that we need to continue, the energy and the strength necessary for us to evolve in this long pathway towards perfection. And may we today, with their blessings and all the spiritual friends present here, enlighten our friend Marcos Diclei in his lecture, and allow each one of us, incarnate and discarnates, to be ready to understand and to learn a little bit about who we are and the road that we had ahead of us. May God bless us, and so be it. So I would like then to invite our friend Marcos Diclei. Thank you very much.
Thanks, brother. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome those who are watching us through the internet. It's a special day indeed. It's Easter Sunday. And when we talk about Easter Sunday, many people think, well, Spiritists don't celebrate Easter. What are you talking about? Do we know exactly what Easter is? So before we get into the core of our discussion today, we'll talk a little bit about Easter. Easter is something that dates from ancient civilizations. It's nothing new, nothing created by the Roman Catholic Church, not created by the Spiritists. It came from traditions to celebrate life. People used to exchange eggs because eggs is a symbol of life. They celebrated spring, especially those living in Toronto. We celebrate spring as never before. In Brazil, we take it for granted. But when we are here, we even dressed up like an Easter egg and use some colors like this. So that's what we are in many families. Hello? Yes, it needs a little bit of proximity. So in many families today, kids are waking up with their Easter eggs. That's that tradition that has no religion background, but that idea of celebrating life. But where does it come from? If you look at the Jewish culture, right, and tradition, and the Christian tradition from Christianity, where does it came from? And if we look back into history, we actually, if we go to the Old Testament, we can see in Exodus references about the Passover, when Moses, after many tries of releasing the people from Israel out of slavery, there was one last try. And the Bible says that the Lord would pass over the houses of the Israelites, and it clearly asked Moses to recommend people the way they should have their dinner, the way they should have their gathering at night, and they should mark their doors with the blood of lamb. And they should be ready on that night, sleep with their clothes and their shoes, because in the morning they would be free and they would run. And the Spirit of God, as in the Bible, came, and the houses that wouldn't be marked, it would kill the firstborn of every human or animal. And with that, the firstborn of the Pharaoh also died. And he finally said to Moses, take your people out of here. And then we also, know that passage where he crosses the Red Sea and finally consolidates the freedom of the Israelites. So that's the tradition from Judaism. That's where there is a celebration of their freedom. More than the spring for us. It's the freedom of 400 years of slavery. But then where Christianity comes in. If you remember in the New Testament, in the Gospel, Jesus, who was raised in Jewish tradition, when the time came, he went to Jerusalem, where everybody used to go to celebrate the Passover. And we all remember, especially on the Catholic tradition, right? Everybody celebrates the Palm Sunday. It's exactly when Jesus came to Jerusalem in his little donkey, fulfilling the prophecies. I don't have the little donkey over here, but the happiness of that moment, it's illustrated. And we all know what happened, right? He celebrated the Passover dinner and prayed and remained for one last time with the disciples before he was, in fact, imprisoned. And, we know what happened. He was condemned, judged and condemned, and crucified. So many people think that because of Jesus' death, his blood erased our sins. It seems like something magic. But what he did, in fact, was to exemplify the ultimate sacrifice of love, forgiving even those who were there killing him, who killed him, right? So this is the example. But it's important for us not to stop here, because what we celebrate today, after Jesus being passing away on a Friday, as tradition says, on Sunday, he rises again. And that's what we are celebrating today. It's not a moment for sadness. It's a moment for happiness, because he brought the teaching, the final teaching for us of the immortal spirit, that life goes beyond the death of our bodies. He brought us from darkness to light. That's what we celebrate today. It doesn't matter if we are Catholics, if we are Spiritists, if we are Protestant, or whatever it is. That's the blessing that we have when he materialized himself to the apostles. And many people will have their different interpretations for it, but we know exactly how it happens. So that's Easter. And that's why we celebrate today. His ultimate example and teaching for us is love. If we have to summarize everything that he left on his entire life, it's love. And if we go to the Gospel according to Spiritism, it's written there that love is the first word of the alphabet, the divine alphabet, for us. And it also says that there is a second word in the alphabet, in the divine alphabet, which is exactly reincarnation. The topic of this month, and this is where we continue today, talking about the blessing of reincarnation. Joe spoke about it 2 weeks ago. Michelle spoke about it last week. If you are listening about reincarnation for the first time, we strongly encourage you to listen to the recordings available on YouTube and the TSS websites. Very important. we also encourage everybody to start by the Spirit's book. So many of what we're covering today, we are building upon the basics of what has been covered before. So there are some basic studies to happen. But reincarnation is the only way that we can understand the justice of God. How can someone be born in a palace and live a life of comfort, and someone else be born in extreme misery, not having even the food to survive, and those two people die? What is the point? What is the point of being just and honest, and someone dishonest, when we see so many people doing wrong things in life and they die in the same way? Sometimes they die happy, as we think they die happy, and we feel, where's the justice of God? That's reincarnation, brothers and sisters. But today we are going to take a look at behind the scenes. We are not going through so much ideas and concepts and history of reincarnation, which is not something invented by the Spiritism. If you look at the New Testament, most likely even the Old Testament will have references to reincarnation. The problem is the kings and queens from history, they removed parts of it. The translators made mistakes translating different words, right? And we have different interpretations, but it is there. And if you go to the lecture of Joe, you will see a few of them there. Now, today we'll talk about a story of one of our brothers called Sigismundo. It's from the book Missionaries of Flight, one of the 10 most important Spiritist book of the 20th century. And we have here the TSS for sale. So we recommend it. But again, if it's your first Spiritist book, start by the Spirit's book. Because with that, you can understand that there are spiritual cities, as you can see on the horizon of this scene. The workers that came from the city of Nosso above the city of Rio de Janeiro, in Brazil, they came to Earth to help the reincarnation process of our friend Sigismundo. And as you can see, the dense atmosphere of our planet is not as green as Nosso. It is dark and is heavy because of our selfishness, because of our pride, because of our attachment to matter. And that's why an interesting thing happens when we observe the story of Sigismundo. The spirits, when they are reincarnating, they are extremely afraid of failure again, because we fail numerous times. So look at this scene. They have all the reasons to be scared and afraid. So many of them cry when they are reincarnating. And we here, parents, we rejoice. They cry on that side, and we smile, and we become very happy. And the opposite phenomena happen. When a loved one passed away and returned to that beautiful place, if we did good things and accomplished our mission, we'll be in a better place. We all cry over here, and they rejoice. Isn't that an interesting phenomenon? It's just the other way around. Something to think about. But then, moving forward with our story, 2 or 3 spirits played a main role on the reincarnation of Sigismundo. One is the instructor Alexander, and this is André Luiz, who dictated the story to Chico Xavier. And they also have over there Herculano, who is the guardian angel or the spiritist protector of Sigismundo, who was about to reincarnate. Oh, so before we reincarnate, our guardian angel is already there. And he stayed for all our incarnation assisting us. Yes. So that's something that we usually don't know. We often don't think about our guardian angel, right? We think it's something for kids, something we learned from our Catholic tradition. It's true, more than what we think. So Alexander and André Luiz, they went to the home of a couple who committed in the spiritual world to receive our brother Sigismundo. They were Adelina and Raquel. Do you know any Raquel around? So Adelino and Raquel, this is their home. And Sigismundo was already there waiting for them with his guardian angel, Herculano. And that's how the story evolves. And an important thing, I'll leave it for later. When they got at their homes at that day, André Luiz observed the family all together. Adelino, Raquel having their meal with their little boy. They had already a son. And André immediately noticed a man sitting at the chair. It was a discarnate man, that is our brother Sigismundo, who was very tired and looking sad. And when he came and embraced Alexander and crying and very worried about the whole situation. He was somewhat upset for the situation because he could feel that the family was rejecting him. And why? Because he previously murdered the family father over there, Adelino. So he murdered Adelino in a previous incarnation. And the three of them agreed on the spiritual realm to give an opportunity to receive their murderer, Sigismundo, as their son, to be able to forgive and teach him love. So can you imagine receiving your own son, your own murder from a past life as your son? That's why we have the forgetfulness of the past. It's a blessing. It gives us an opportunity to start new again. However, unconsciously, we know those things. If you go to the Spirit's book, it says, where is written the law of God, the law of nature? In our conscience. So we, deep there, we know. And Adelino was feeling his presence. Adelino was feeling his presence. And then, they spoke with Sigismundo, and they approached to see the situation of the couple, because they could feel the negative energy in the environment at home. So Alexander approached and started to look at the conversation. And the conversation was maybe very familiar for some of us, and for some of us, the stages, in different stages that we go in our lives. And the wife, Raquel, was talking to Adelino. How was the work today? Fine. Did you close that deal? No. Or did you get support from your boss? Yes. So when that's going to happen? I have no idea. I'm sorry to hear that. Never mind, it's not your business. So he was extremely rude and negative, and she was trying to break the ice as a noble spirit. And the relationship between them wasn't good. It wasn't good at all. And they thought, how on earth or heaven we will have someone reincarnating in this place with these two fighting like that? There's no way we need to do something, right? So they thought about who is the smartest person here we can reach out. Of course, it's not mom and dad. He decided to use the little boy. Right? As he is someone who can break that ice by triggering different sentiments in mom and dad. Alexander approached him and gave him a kind of magnetic pass on his heart, and gave him the intuition, which is the mediumship that we all have. We are all mediums. And that's the mediumship we all have, the intuition. And he gave the inspiration to the boy to ask, Mom, why is Dad sad? Well, honey, and Mom was saying, right? He is just worried with his business. What is business in his innocence? Honey, business is what he does to earn the money and bring, food and pay our bills. And, he is not really sad. He's just worried because outside he has to be smiling all the time. He must be happy to do his job well and to keep his team motivated and to keep his boss happy. So sometimes he cannot express his sadness and his worries, and he is only able to do it here at home, when he can express really what is happening with no masks. And the boy said, "Oh, that's so sad. That's too bad, right, Mom, that he cannot smile here at home." And that was starting to touch Adelino to the point that he said, "Oh, honey, I'm sorry. I'm not really sad. I'm just tired. I have been working too much. But I promise we'll do something together tonight. How about we pray, Dad, tonight? How about you come earlier and pray together?" And he looked at his wife. "Oh my gosh, I don't remember the last time I've prayed." "Okay, we'll do, son. As soon as I get home, we'll pray together." And then, the little boy just dispersed and continued to eat. And he revealed to his wife that, "Honey, I have been having dreams and nightmares for months, and I just didn't share with you." As often, right? Couples, we have our own problems, and it feels like two soccer teams playing in their own fields, trying to score in the opposite directions, right? So he was nurturing those concerns but not sharing. He finally shared, "I dream every night that a beggar come to me asking for help, but when I look at him, all of a sudden I think he wants to kill me, and he starts to run after me, and I don't sleep at night, and I wake up like this, tired and extremely worried, and I don't know what's happening." And she wasn't aware of that. So he was dreaming with Sigismundo, who came imploring for the opportunity of reincarnation, but when he looked at Sigismundo, he could see the man who killed him. So in our dreams, that's another teaching here from the behind the scenes, when we sleep at night, dear friends, our body stays there. But we, as immortal spirits, we wander around whenever we want. If we have vices, we will go to places where we can feed our vices. If we want to become better, we may go to a church or to a place that we can nurture our spirit with good things, or help someone. Or sometimes we go after, fights and people and revenge and anger and those feelings, and then we wake up tired. So one interesting learning from this. And then Alexander clearly saw the mood changing. Adelino changed his mental state, and he describes that he left home on that day with unusual kindness to his wife, to his son, and his mental state completely changed. So they accomplished the mission to settle things, to clear things between the couple, so that reincarnation could happen. He came back at night. The little boy came, "Dad, you came earlier." "Yes," and they had their shower, their supper, and time for bed. And the little boy, started to pray with very simple words and short words, but with sentiments. That's what matters. Sometimes grown-ups, we do long prayers, but with no feelings. So we can learn from the little boy with his very childish and simple words, but with deep sentiment, to the point that from the chest of Raquel, great light was going toward her husband, Adelino, inspired noble sentiments on him, and he even started to cry. As you can see here on the scene, there's more people than only Alexander and André Luis. There were 3 other friends that came to assist the reincarnatory process. Once the boy was on bed, Mom and Dad went to bed, and again they were sleeping in their bed. What happened when we sleep? We wander around, still connected to our bodies by some kind of cords. As you can see over there as a silver cord, it's the connection between our spiritual body or perispirit to our body. So we wander around to whatever is our interest. Raquel, for example, she was not aware of everybody else in the room. She was not even aware about her husband being around. She was interested to talk to her grandmother, who came to talk to her. So she only could see and greet and talk to her grandmother. Very happy. She was in a very good condition. Adelino, instead, he was very heavy. He was feeling tired for his worries, for his connection with the material world. Very different state of mind from Raquel. He only could feel Sigismundo around. And immediately when he started to wander in his room, he saw Sigismundo. And he started to scream in panic and wander around the same nightmares he had every night. So immediately Alexander started to give him some magnetic passes, sending him some magnetic energies to calm him down. I said, calm down. And he couldn't see Alexander, but once he started to send him the energies, he was able to see. And he saw, missionary of God, please help me, release me from these nightmares, from this man who persecutes me. And he started to clarify, Adelino, what's wrong with you? Is that the way that you receive in your homes your brothers who are begging for forgiveness, who are begging for an opportunity? Remember the teachings from Christ and forgive this brother. He doesn't want to make you no harm. He wants an opportunity to be reborn again on earth, as you committed on the spiritual realm. So he said, calm down. He gave him some good words, and he finally was able to compose himself. He was able to look at Sigismundo and gave his hand, shook Sigismundo's hand, who, in an act of humility and humbleness, kissed his hands and implored forgiveness and implored for the opportunity to be reborn as his son. And André Luiz describes a fantastic phenomena where there was a kind of gray and dark cloud around Adelino, and immediately when Sigismundo kissed his hands, that cloud disappeared completely, and he was able to see his noble character. Right? So it's an amazing transformation that happens right there. And they left that day with their mission accomplished. And Alexander was saying, great, I'm very satisfied that we make such a great progress. So Sigismundo was feeling more encouraged because he was able to settle with them, and the reincarnatory progress was happening. But André, as usual, he describes in a mental torture because he was extremely curious. But a good curiosity for learning, right? And as soon as he used to think, the instructors started to answer his questions. He wouldn't even ask, because they can read our minds, right? The more evolved spirits, they can read our minds. So André was saying, I don't understand. Why so much work to have Adelino accepting Sigismundo to reborn? Why he just, be quiet and accept? Why it's such a great work? And Alexander, with his patience, said, André, here is why. Adelino, with his rejection to accept Sigismundo as his son, he had such a negative mental state that his mental energies were destroying the reproductive cells. He was destroying the reproductive cells, and when not destroying or killing the reproductive cells, he was poisoning the DNA as an instinctive act for preventing that to happen. So this, friends, is another amazing learning for us, because we are constantly going to the doctors looking for pills to resolve our problems. And over again, Jesus and the high evolved spirits and Spiritism points us back to our inner selves, because in most of the cases, we are creating the diseases. Of course, there's no one-size-fits-all here. This was the case for Sigismundo, for Raquel, and for Adelino. There are several other reasons why, someone can have the reproductive ability affected. But in this case, was Adelino's mental state. And if they didn't settle the things between husband and wife, and between Sigismundo and Adelino, there wouldn't be anything they could do. So they would be back on the next week. They gave a week for things to settle, to stabilize. And after a week they came back. And they encountered a large group of spirits called constructor spirits, like engineers, who would be acting on the first moments of cellular division, molding the fetus and constituting the embryo for the incarnation. Amazing work that happens over there, and we don't even think about it. We just think that the nature follows its path. And they describe there are three components when someone is getting born, mainly. One, of course, is the genetic factors, the DNA from mom and dad that will form that body. But then there is the whole environment. What is the environment that baby is getting born? Is he accepted by mom and dad? Is he rejected by the environment? And third, by his own will, his own desires. How much does he want to get reborn? What's the mental state of the spirit incarnating? So there are several factors. That's why there is a need for that protector spirit to not only assist during that period, but as we will see, it will remain. It will remain with them even after the conception. Here's a scene that is very interesting. And Andrea was puzzled because he said, I couldn't decipher and understand nothing from what Alexander was doing. He was analyzing the DNA maps of the new body that Sigismundo would occupy. He was analyzing the work that they would have to do, and he was even analyzing some of the conditions he would have, such as a heart disease that he would have because of a previous existence that he had. So we all have a map. There's a department in Ossular who describes the plan for the reincarnation of every single one of us. So that defect that we have in our bodies and we don't like and we want to hide from everybody, that somehow affected the way we are, someone that are a bit more shy, embarrassed of this or that, that's why we have them. Most likely we asked for it to keep us on our toes, to keep us on track. Beauty is a very dangerous temptation. So that's why I ask a nose like this, so it's no problem. I still got my hair, see? But jokes aside, that's what was happening over there. They were studying the work to be done in the projections. You can see the mood from the couple in a different state. So things were progressing as they wanted. But Andrea notes Sigismundo getting very tired. He couldn't stand up any longer. So they took him to a room, and he said, I don't understand. I was so well, I was so excited and happy, but now I'm feeling sad. I'm so afraid of failure. I don't think I'm going to make it. And then Alexander, listening to it, said to Andrea, it's natural that the spirit, when he's approaching the reincarnation, that his energy starts to low. However, and then he talks to Sigismundo, however, Sigismundo, you are going too far. Elevate your mental thoughts, elevate your gratitude to God, because you need to keep awake, you need to be vigilant. We need your participation in the whole process. You cannot be as some spirits who are pretty much unconscious during the entire process. And there is spirits of a lower nature, inferior in elevation, that they are unconscious. They don't know, they don't understand what's happening with them. But Sigismundo, in his condition, they needed his support. So Alexander kind of give him a reprimand and say, raise your energy. And it worked. So he started to feel better, right? They need his support. In the next day, so they went back to the colony and they came back to the next day. We can see that is not something like this, right? It takes time, it takes preparation. And the next day, Sigismundo was in a separate room, and Alexander was talking to him, explaining that the importance of he remaining vigilant, giving him some thoughts about what would happen. And again, he was still afraid and scared, and asking him, please don't forget about me, help me, be with me, very scared. Back to the point we discussed at the very beginning of our lecture, That's what happened with us. We are scared because it is like death for us. When we are dying here, we are scared because we usually, most of us, we are afraid of the unknown. What's going to happen with me after? So the spirits are also scared because what's going to happen with me on earth? Am I going to fail again? I don't want to fail again. I don't want to increase my debts. So he was calming him down, giving him some magnetic passes, and told him, the time has come. So here's a very interesting phenomenon that happens. The way André Luiz explains is, for the reincarnation to happen, they have to reduce the body of the spirits who will reincarnate again. So there is a transformation in the spiritual body, in the pure spirit, so that the spirit can be attached, connected, placed with the fetus, with the embryo, for the process. And is the spirit, of course, as Sigismundo has a body of an adult. And the way they describe is exactly like death. The pure spirit has to release the components that they need to survive on that plane. As when we die, we have to leave the components that keep us alive on this planet, our body. So the spiritual body changes to gain some plasticity, to be able to shrink. So, and André was very impressed to see that at the end of the process, a few hours, Sigismundo looked like a baby, looked like a little child, right? And then after that, they hand him over to the grandmother of Raquel, who decided to give the baby to her, right? So it was a very impressive process. And André described with such a great clarity that unfortunately we don't have the time for here. This whole process, it's a summer course for us, right? But I encourage you to read the book. So once they are ready, it's time to give the baby to his new mom. And they go into the room where they were, at least with their bodies, asleep on their bed, and you can see that Adelino and Raquel are here still connected to their bodies. And André described there were more than 100 people there with them, all friends of the couple, especially Adelino, for more that he murdered, Sigismundo, for more that Sigismundo murdered Adelino. He had been working for decades in the spiritual colony, helping the other spirits who were coming from earth. So he gained merit because he was doing something good. That's why Jesus said, right, that love covers a multitude of sins or mistakes. Because it's not because I did something wrong to someone that I am condemned for the eternity. If I am doing something good, that can alleviate the suffering I need to go through and maybe erase it to some extent. So that's why so many people here praying for them. The room was decorated with flowers. It was a festivity. It was a festivity for them. And then they started to pray. Alexander started to pray for that moment, right? And Raquel asked to receive her new son and her niece as a gesture of extreme resignation and humbleness. And Alexander just does a beautiful prayer, and the room is filled with light. But all of a sudden, André notes, after he finished his prayer, that an even greater light came from the above, and a crown, a rutilant, a scintillant crown came down from the above. And André couldn't see anything. He could hear and feel some vibrations from the above, but he couldn't see anybody. So it's not because we are spirits that we can see all the spirits around us. We only see from our level down, right? So the spirits who were bringing that crown to Raquel were so highly evolved that even Alexander, who was the most evolved spirit, he couldn't see it. And he couldn't dare to look at them. He just bowed because they were very evolved spirits, bringing that crown as a symbol of their blessings for Raquel and her new baby. And as she brought the baby to her chest, they both went back to their bed, because that was the time where the connection between the spirit who was about to reincarnate, Sigismundo, would connect with his new body, with his body of his mom. And that's a fantastic description from André Luiz, and a big question mark for all of us, especially with many of us thinking, well, abortion, I can't do that abortion because it's so early stage, there's no harm. We'll see what happened here. The summary is that everybody out, everybody left, those 100 people, and only remained in the room Adelino, Raquel, Sigismundo, who was the little baby now, Alexander, who would be coordinating the process, and Herculano, the guardian angel of Sigismundo. So Raquel is laying down on bed, and obviously there was something so mysterious and unknown to us that is just marvelous, right? Before we had the conception, before we have the fecundation, is that the word? Before the fecundation, before the encounter of the feminine, the egg and the masculine cell, right? He observed hundreds of masculine cells, genetic cells, running toward the eggs. And then Alexander kind of expands the view, and André could observe they were looking at those cells to pick the most appropriate one to be chosen for Sigismundo. So it's not by accident, it's not by nature. Every single one of a reincarnation, those engineers, those constructors, as they call themselves in the book, they were there orchestrating. And he looked at the millions of masculine cells and they pick one, and he kind of gives a magnetic pass to the cell, and that cell clearly becomes faster than the others, right? And at the moment that one becomes faster than the others, it approaches the egg from the mom and gets into the egg, and the egg immediately changes, the composition becomes hardened, and no other cell can get in. And the process of fecundation starts. The conception starts. The life, the division is about to start. At this very moment, Alexander says, let's now place our dear friend Adelino and your friend Sigismundo in his reduced forms in this little globe of light. That's how he described the fecunded egg, as a little globe of light, and he places Sigismundo there in a way that we cannot describe, obviously, but there are some details in the book, but a very high level for our understanding. So at the moment that the conception starts, a spirit is assigned and it's placed over there. So when we talk about abortion, we say, after a few days, there's no harm. There's a spirit already there. Again, there's no one size fits all. Obviously, we know that there are babies, they got born with no spirit, right? They are not alive when they got born. And, as we learn from the Spiritists, it may be a trial for the parents. So there's no one size fits all. But in this case, there's a spirit, and that's the very moment when it happens. So after that whole process, all the constructor spirits around him give them magnetic passes to consolidate the process, to calm them down, right? And obviously, in the next day, she wakes up with that feeling of a baby, of a son, and it will take a couple of days until she realizes she's pregnant, right? It's not immediately, but she has that feeling. She has that impression of the dreams that she had last night. Oh, I dreamed with my grandmother. I dreamed with a little baby. And we think this is something out of our imagination only. So our dreams tell us more reality than what we think. We not often have clear dreams because the confusion of our minds when we go back to our bodies, it's so great that we forget. We see pieces of information only, right? But she kept that clarity that a new sun would come soon. And our spirit friends, they went back to the colony. This image, by the way, reminds me of an image that we saw in Brazil when Chico Xavier was very sick once, probably a few years before his discarnation. There was a flash of light going through the window of his hospital room. And they came back to the spiritual city of Nossolar, an amazing city where they were workers of the Department of Reincarnation. And André was invited by Herculano, the guardian angel of Sigismundo, to come back whenever he was able to help in the process of protection. And that was something very interesting also. Protection. Because for more that they did, everything that they did to project the body and everything, they had to protect the mental state of the parents, they have to protect the home from the assault of inferior beings that may be complicating the whole process. And they talk again numerous times about the 7 years old milestone, that the whole reincarnation process only consolidates when the children reach the 7 years old. And there is a whole explanation from André Luiz related to the blood and the formation of the blood cells and the independence of the body and the spirit, that I won't cover this for the sake of time. So this is, friends, in a very quick view, and one example of what happened to every single one of us. And André Luiz was one of his mental questioning, is this the way that happened with every single one of us? And Alexander said, no, there's no one size fits all. There are spirits so elevated that they hardly need an assistant from us. So we can imagine, a Jesus coming, right, which is way up there, or even not there like Jesus, but someone like Chico Xavier or others. They probably didn't need that much of effort, right? But he says that Sigismundo was a middle class spirit, let's put it this way, right? Our level. But there are spirits from very low regions that they require much more work than what we saw in this case. So there's no one size fits all. Every spirit goes through the same. But the importance is we all have the assistance behind the scenes. To wrap up, I saw this on Facebook the other day and I just wanted to reinforce that for us who may be having your first contact with Spiritism, talking about spiritual cities, guardian angel, spirit constructors, spirits selecting the masculine cells, and some of the other ideas may seem too much. That's why I encourage you guys to read the Spirit's book, get the basics, to join us for our classes over here on Wednesdays and Thursdays, right? Or even watch the lecture from Joe and Michelle the past 2 weeks. You will give us some basis to be able to understand better what we discussed here today. But some of the things that we covered and we take it for granted in our life is the presence of the spirits in our homes. When we talk about spiritual realm, we think about the spirits being in a place like Nossolar. No, they are among us. They are among us here, they are among us on the street, and they may be among us inside our homes. What kind of spirits will be there? Well, depending on what kind of thoughts we do have. Do we pray? The importance of prayer is tremendously. And André says, why so much protection? Well, because some homes were so unbalanced because mom and dad has such a lower mental stage, so attuned with inferior spirits, so attuned with vices, that makes very hard for any spirit to reincarnate. And then Andre asks, well, how about if the mother is a more noble spirit connected to religion and God, and dad is a lower inferior spirit, right? More inferior spirit. What happens? He says, the higher, the more evolved spirit, the noble woman in your example, would protect the home with her mental state and with her prayer. And in the book we can see examples of, couples where the husband was a completely lunatic, right? Full of vices, negative thoughts, and he would come home with inferior spirits follow him. But as soon as he opens the gate of his home, these spirits would remain outside and they wouldn't be able to enter, because his wife was in constant prayer daily. So prayer, friends, is much more important than we think. The moment when they were gathering together for their dinners, their lunch, their breakfast, such a very important moments that we have. And those were the moments where the spirits decided to approach them, because they worked all together. They could use the energies from each other to change the situation at home. So we also take it for granted. All those are experiences, as we call, behind the scenes. But as we become more familiar with them, we start to appreciate them. We start to be more vigilant, not only for the babies that we had and are in our homes, not only for those who are growing up, and not only from the babies that are maybe about to come, but for our own selves, for our own families. So I hope this was able to give you an idea about the second word of the divine alphabet that Jesus brought to us. Thank you. We have 3 minutes for questions. I'm shrinking the time.
So, if there's any questions for Diclei or for any one of us?
I have one question.
Oh,
okay.
The one here and then.
When you said that once the baby is ready and the mom is accepted and has the fertility and everything, I heard that the baby not necessarily, like a body cannot hold another spirit inside. So it's just once that happens, they just connect, or they live inside the mom.
The word that André Luiz describes over there is a superposition of their perispirits. So I think they get pretty close to each other. They are not necessarily put one inside the other. They are just very close, as you hold a baby, very close to your chest. That's the description that he does, right? But he places Sigismundo in that case connected to the fetus, right, with the embryo. So that he says we placed in the little globe of light. So that connection, that cord that we saw, those connections are made at the very moment, right? And they are very close. So it's not necessarily an inside, but they are very close on that area because of the energy exchange, right? He describes the way the body is formed is like when we have a magnet, a piece of magnet, and little sparks of iron. Depending on the position that you place the magnet, the iron will gather around, right? So the spirit, once he's there, the spirit starts to gather the cells and giving shape to the body. It's just a fantastic process. That's why it's that close, right? It was such an amazing description. Does it help? Fabio?
This process you just described, we got 50 billion people living in the world, right? So we are talking about beings, spirits,
Yes.
acting every minute all over the globe.
Yes.
And still, why we have spirits that become the most Muslims or from other religions, and we got all this conflict, and like how
Thank
how
you.
is this direction? How we can get so out of the curve?
Yes, thank you for that, because I was thinking about addressing that and I didn't, right? I was about to make a joke saying,
Because this was a beautiful story.
yes, I was about to do a little joke saying, this is what happened for the Spiritists. No, this happened for the atheists, this happened for the Catholics, to the Protestant. We are even unconscious of all that. We even don't know that a guardian angel exists. We all deserve that support, no matter what. It doesn't, independent of anything. That's the unconditional love from God, right? And the unconditional love that Jesus taught us. So even if we are a murderer, in the case of Sigismundo, we deserve that help when the time comes. So there's no religion, there's no sect. And one thing that Andrea was puzzled with that and asked the same kind of question that you just asked, and then Alexander just turns to him and said, yes, I know you think it's a lot of work, but I'll tell you, the idleness after death is just a very unfortunate misconception from the human beings and from the religions on earth, because we think that when we discarnate and pass away, we'll be playing harps with the angels, ring, ring, right? And no, the work is never stops. Exactly as you said, everybody who will reincarnate in one level or another will need some support.
So there's a little bit more information on that, because Andrea Luiz also in the book Between Heaven and Earth, for example, explained to us that. Oh, okay, very close to you.
They won't see you.
Thank you. I'm shy of cameras.
Pretend it's not here.
So they describe to us that depending on which level of spiritual evolution you are, you retain your religious background or not when you're in the spiritual world. What that translates to is that there's about 3 times more discarnated spirits than incarnated spirits on Earth. So yes, there are billions and billions of spirits, like about 3 times more than we are. If we're about 6 to 7 billion and right now incarnated, we'll have about 21, of spirits. So if I'm leaving a specific religion, right? Sorry? Oh, that's just for Earth, yeah, of course.
Just
We're
for
not talking about the universe, yeah. So what translates to is that if I have a religion here on Earth, and if I'm very connected to it through multiple incarnations, when I discarnate, I still retain some of those beliefs with me. And I can live in the spiritual world following some guidelines of my specific religion. Of course, I can even present myself as a spirit dressed in a traditional way of dressing
Priest.
from another religion, for example. If I'm a Muslim or from a priest, or I can actually show up as a spirit retaining that presentation. So over time, over multiple incarnations, I start to shed away that necessity, because we start to understand that, well, there's a little bit more to the existence than actually what I believed on, and then things starts to move on. But they come back and help each other. So for example, there are spiritual cities composed of Muslims, for sure. Spirits that were Muslims, discarnated, retained their intrinsic beliefs because they were very connected to it still, and they help each other understand things like this in their own ways, and they allow this reincarnation process to happen even inside that specific culture. And then, of course, eventually all of us will merge into a world where religions themselves are not necessarily followed as we used to believe. For example, even in Spiritism, you'll see that even some of our beliefs today in Spiritism are probably going to be enlightened even more when we start to evolve even more. Mm-hmm. So there's always this universal act of love and helping each other. That's what bounds us together, even in the spiritual world. So independently of what's the spiritual background, the spirituality will find ways to put this in practice, independently of whether you believe it or not, just like Marcus Diclei explained. Independently, even, if you don't believe it, or if you even, don't like that idea, you still can go into the process unconsciously. Yeah. So that's pretty much what happens.
Thank you, Marco. Any final questions? If not, thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Marcos. It was very enlightening, and it's again one of the